Guys, welcome back to the Masters of the Universe Classic Director's Commentary with your host, me, Scott Toy Guru Neitlich's Lego form. The reason I did this series is because, well, since the inception of Masters of the Universe Classics, I was the brand manager, which means, I was a major role in getting them to market. I mean, I didn't sculpt them like the Horsemen did or manufacture them the way design and engineering did, but I helped promote them, I helped pick out characters. I was a big driving force, and I thought doing a series like this would be a lot of fun, and it has been. Getting to launch Matty Collector at Mattel and work on Masters of the Universe, and in fact, all sorts of other projects at Mattel has been some of the best times of my career, and I couldn't be more grateful. Heck, I even got to put my own creation in the line. Probably just glad I updated him and didn't use the original version of Mighty Spectre from when I was a kid. Ugh. Well, today I run Spectre Creative, to help people with branding and marketing needs at spectrecreative.com. But when I was at Mattel, I did contribute to the 2016 line before I left the company. By contribute, I worked on the original rollout before it was dramatically cut back after I left. There really wasn't someone kind of in my place, but we can go back in time and sort of look at 2016, and even though I didn't work on it directly, I figure we can wrap up the director's commentary just by kind of rolling through it. It was originally planned out from day one. I planned out the line actually all the way through 2018. It was crazy. But then we had to trim back after like 2013, I think, when we were starting to lose subscribers, and we said, okay, we're just going to focus on the big gun. So originally 2016, which was going to be Masters of the Universe Chronicles, it was a relaunch of the line, and well, it was going to be a full year, and it was also going to have a secondary line that was going to be the animated line. So you notice it's still just called Masters of the Universe there. They hadn't settled on Club Grayskull yet, or, what would just continue as classics instead of reverting to Chronicles. Eventually, after 2016 was over, Super 7 stepped in and took over the license, and it looked like they were set up to produce classics for years to come until Mattel took the license back. So we got a few from Super 7, and then classics went the big A way, but hey, it doesn't mean we're done talking about it because, yes, I may not have been there for 2016 and for the Super 7 items in 2017, but we can kind of just blaze through them. So I figure we're going to talk about 2016, but only classics. We're not going into the Filmation line. That is a separate line. It's not, while it's compatible height-wise, aesthetically, not so much. So much like this AM radio and headset, which came out in the 80s, was not considered one of the vintage He-Man action figures, we're not going to look at what was called Club Grayskull. We're just going to look at the classics versions because they were an updated version of the original toy, not a animated version based on the original, or the animation strained through sort of a toy lens. That could be a whole other series, but I wasn't there to work on it, so probably not going to deep dive into that one. But 2016 still had a lot of goodness in the classics aesthetic. And while it was Mattel's last year, and while I was really just there for some character selection and some choices that I wasn't involved with, well, it was a cool year to finish off a lot, and let's kind of dive in because I still had a lot that I contributed even though I wasn't there, and not everything went off to perfect hitch, but hey, 2016 is a year we all remember, right? Nothing important happened then. That was pre-pandemic. It's like we've all blanked our minds. It's crazy the fact that I actually started this video series pre-pandemic. Okay, Lord Masque, the first figure from 2016. So he was on my list, if you will, the original rollout. Not only was he on that list, he was the first figure, which is probably why he became the first figure, because they were already working on him before 2016 was locked in place. You kind of start working on the first one or two figures in order to get rolling. So that's probably why Lord Masque remained in the first spot. Most fans appreciate him as the sort of partner of Chakotay. Okay, her flunky, I don't know. Maybe they had other roles. Either way, this was a figure people wanted back in the day because, look, he looks freaking cool. He's got a cape and a mask and the barbarian harness, and, he looks very MOTU. And getting him into line was important, and he was saved for 2016 to help anchor that because we knew what an important Filmation character this was. So he made it out in the familiar green lightning box that the rest of the line had shipped in. They did not switch to new branding or move from Classics to Chronicles, but they did remove the bios from the back, which is probably because I didn't write bios for any of these characters yet. It was on my list to do, but I hadn't gotten to it. And again, the new team sort of was doing it on the fly. They didn't really sort of have someone jump into my exact role. But Super 7 supplied a bio years later, so yay, awesome. Again, it's fantastic to see, work done on this line by multiple toy companies and with the love of so many fans. One thing to note is the accessories he came with were not intended for him. So all these photos of him wielding the sword and shield, well, those were shipped because he didn't really have his own sword and shield, and I'm sure the Horseman, this is 100% Horseman, they put New Adventures accessories, not from this New Adventures He-Man or even this New Adventures He-Man, but the second vintage release, which was this one, which had the alternate shield and sword. So this shipped with Lord Masque. So if you already had New Adventures He-Man, well, now you could display him with all of the fun, cool pieces that the Classics version had, with a helmet, with a vest, or you could now switch to an entirely new shield, which is awesome. That's kind of the whole point. It's like what we were trying to do with Dare Hero 2 in the last video, is reward long-term fans with payoffs, and when we could do new accessories. So I wasn't there for that choice, but I love that someone, I'm thinking the Horseman, made it. And for those who just wanted Lord Masque to hang out with Chakotay, you could do that too, and he could still hold He-Man's sword, even though that's technically not correct, which is the best kind of correct. All right, if we're talking 2016, we do have to talk about Serpentine King Hiss. And, well, yeah, I kind of like Leia. I had nothing to do with it. I had nothing to do with this. This was not the plan that I worked on. There's lots of versions of King Hiss, and we knew people wanted to do all sorts of swappable torsos. So at San Diego Comic-Con 2015, 14, I talked about that being a replacement for the original one, because I love King Hiss, and I wanted to do like a real badass version. And essentially, we told fans that while it wouldn't come with the 2000X King Hiss figure, the torso was coming as part of the subscription. I almost said prescription. Was part of the subscription. So it wouldn't actually come with Snake Armor He-Man and Battle Armor King Hiss, the 2000X versions, because we couldn't fit them in the package, because there was already a lot going on. But it was worked out. That torso, with the snake torso, was supposed to ship with the laser figures. You can see that giant spot in the middle where there's nothing. Yeah, there's a reason. That's where the King torso was going to go. The King torso, the King Hiss torso. So, unfortunately, I wasn't there, and plans got dropped, but the new team released it as a single standalone figure. I can't really comment on that because I had nothing to do with it. My plans was to release the torso with the Laserlight figures. All right, so with that out of the way, let's move on to Vultak. I figured the only thing I had to do with this was putting his name on a list. So he was part of the original 2016 rollout, although he was later in the year, but because they were only doing 6 figures in Classics instead of the original 12. Now, while he can easily be confused with Panthro from the Thundercats when you remove his armor, no, he's from Filmation, and he's pretty popular, because anytime you have a flying figure and a Horde member, those are two really cool things. Put them together and you got, double cool things. So, yeah, they released the evil Zookeeper of the Horde, and he even came with a rope, and, you can play out all the fun butt-kicking action. Clearly a figure fans have wanted for years. Lots of customs have shown up. Again, winged Horde, you're checking off awesome boxes. Plus, he was a She-Ra villain. Arrived in the usual green box, and again, no bio, but hey, for those who've waited for him, he was held back for 2016 when we got the Filmation rights, because we knew we wanted to populate each year with big A-list Filmation characters that were wanted. Mazel tov to the Horsemen, too, on that amazing crossbow. They always come up with these crossbows that are just incorporate the character's design, but keep that Horde crossbow look. So it's been one of my favorite surprises to see how they do each crossbow. I love it. And yeah, anytime you can build up your Horde members, fantastic figure. Wish I was there for it. I had to subscribe to get it. I got it. Glad I have him. All right. Wrapping up this video, and we'll continue with the rest in part 2 and 3 of 2016, is the Anti-Eternia He-Man. So he's got an interesting history, and history with me in particular, because I really, really tried to get this figure made, but I hit a roadblock. I talked about that in another video, which I'll link at the end. It's a whole story into itself. But yeah, I could not get this figure made until Mattel decided they wanted to make it, which they did in quite a few toy lines, because it's an easy repaint. It's sort of like, figured we would have seen this back in the day. So what's his story? What's his kind of origin? Well, he started in the German radio drama, and then eventually showed up in the sort of Masterverse comic books as a villain crossing the time streams, or kind of like a Kang type character, I guess. But for a brand manager, he's an easy repaint, and that's why I wanted to do him, because, one, I wanted to pay homage to the German radio drama. I know there's a lot of fans, but yeah, from a logistical standpoint, from a customization standpoint, it's a super, super simple repaint. You can use the existing He-Man tool and just slap on different paint. Wow. So Mattel eventually did figure this out, and their rationale for not wanting to make one, I guess, was dissolved. And he arrived not in the standard green blister, but in a black and red one. And I'm guessing this was 100% Brandon Sapinski. He was the designer at the time. And I don't think the Horseman may have worked on this figure at all. I'm thinking it was all Brandon, because putting in that skull shield is so Brandon. Kind of like how Faker was only worked on by Terry Higuchi. The Horseman didn't work on the original Faker, just internal Mattel design. So while Anti-Eternia He-Man has his fans and has gone on to, have all sorts of spin-offs, and now I think we have Anti-Eternia Everybody, thanks to the comic book, Mattel did make a Origins version of him too, which, again, he shows up a lot because he's an easy repaint. It's amazing the resistance. So why was there so much resistance to having this version of He-Man? Well, you get a new manager, things change, and once there's someone in a new seat at the head of the table, suddenly restrictions that you used to have disappear. Happens in the toy industry all the time.